From inside the Dragon. Bob and Doug aboard the Dragon vehicle just finishing up their meal. They're shifting a little bit from what Chris Cassidy has experienced in terms of their sleep schedule aboard the International Space Station, but they'll be all synced up when they arrive at just about 9:30 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. Again, teams here winding down. Flight Director Zeb Scoville's Orbit 2 team will be handing over shortly to Rebecca Wingfield over in the blue flight control room. Until then, we'll toss it back over to Hawthorne to take us through the media event coming up here shortly.
Thanks for that update from Houston, Gary. We're very much looking forward to getting our first glimpse inside of our Crew Dragon capsule from the perspective of Bob and Doug. In case you're just joining us, we've had a spectacular day, an on-time liftoff, given the fact that we were once again iffy on the weather. Just seeing the blue sky come out in force upon liftoff was quite a sight. And just real quick, I'll check the clock here. Yeah, we've just passed the T+.
Oh, I think we just lost your audio, Kate. I think your mic pack might have just died. But as she was just saying, and we'll make sure she can keep saying in just a couple of minutes, we had that on-time liftoff, 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time from Pad 39A, the Falcon 9 rocket delivering Bob and Doug to their initial orbit. We haven't been tracking any issues with Dragon since they arrived in outer space. We've already completed 2 of our burns so far, 2 of 5 that are going to be responsible for getting us to the International Space Station. We did that phase burn just a few hours ago, that wrapping up at 1:16 p.m. over here on the West Coast. And then Bob and Doug also did the manual flight test, so at the controls of Dragon for the very first time, and they were able to complete that test objective successfully, putting it into a special orientation known as LVLH, or local vertical, local horizontal, literally just using the Earth itself as a guide to position themselves as they were flying. Also able to do that boost burn successfully. That wrapped up just about 20 minutes ago. There's another 2.5-minute firing of those Draco thrusters, the second of 5 burns to get us to the International Space Station. Right now, though, at this moment, the crew is still on board Dragon, and they're at the latter part of their day. It's been a pretty long day for Bob and Doug so far. But at this moment, they are just wrapping up their meal. It's the first meal by a crew on board Crew Dragon, and we'll see if they let us in on what they were eating when we get inside with them in the cabin in just a little while. The next major milestone coming up is going to be the close co-elliptic burn. And so this is just to a little bit more circularize our orbit, so we're going to be a constant 10 kilometers lower than the International Space Station. That's coming up in just under 21 minutes from now. And then assuming that that burn gets done successfully, we'll be 3 of 5 in the bag and well on our way to the International Space Station. And then we should get a chance to check in with Bob and Doug on board.
And just really, really pleased with the mission progress thus far. Like we've said before, launch today, that is not where it ended. Obviously, Bob and Doug are en route to the International Space Station, but even once they, hop on board the space station, it's still not done, right? We got to get them back home. So just as a reminder, while it will be a very long initial day of the mission, it certainly is not the conclusion. So just something to keep in mind. We will be staying live here with you on air, bringing you updates throughout Bob and Doug's journey to the International Space Station over the next let's see, we're probably got another 15 hours left at this point, 15 and a half hours or so. And so, yeah, really exciting day. Even still, the energy in the building here at SpaceX headquarters is very much electric, given the success of the day thus far. But Mission Control here is right next to me, to my left. We just had a shift change among the Dragon operators, and we're still going strong.
I know Gary walked us through. They're also doing a shift change over at Mission Control Houston, but I mean, you have teams working around the clock there in Houston and around the clock now for this flight uphill for Dragon. Just some of the voices that you're going to be hearing throughout the launch. Jay Aranja was the core, so essentially the Capcom here in Hawthorne that was talking to Bob and Doug. He's since handed over to Laura Crabtree, who's now on console there, right behind us in the Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. Going to be talking Bob and Doug through the last couple of hours of their day before they get ready to go to sleep. Again, they have about 8 hours timeline for them, and then they'll wake up tomorrow morning, and by that point we'll be wrapping up those fifth and final burn before we get into what we call the approach initiation. So really, the really close maneuvers in towards station. By that point, they'll only be a few kilometers below and about 7 kilometers behind, and then they'll execute a burn that's going to bring them in really close to the space station. And by that point, we'll also be getting some views from the station, which we're always going to be looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there, the view on your screen on your right-hand side, that is Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California. And I believe on the left there that is our core, Laura Crabtree. And like Dan just mentioned, she would be the person that is communicating back and forth with Bob and Doug, walking them and confirming procedure, walking them on upcoming events and confirming procedure points. And so it has been a wonderful day. And getting back to the next event that we have coming up in exactly 20 minutes or thereabout, exactly almost.
About 17 and a half
17 and a half minutes, yeah. We're going to get to the close coelliptic burn, or close burn. And like we've said before, that will place Dragon on an orbit roughly coelliptic with the space station. Now, as a reminder, there are 16 different thrusters available for Dragon to use for these on-orbit maneuvers. The 4 forward bulkhead Draco thrusters is primarily used for these bigger delta velocity maneuvers, like we would be executing here with the close burn. The 12 service section Dracos are around Dragon's base, and those are used for attitude and low impulse translational control. A mix of these have been used for each of these burns, and we of course have redundancy built into Dragon if we run into issues with any of the thrusters during the mission. So yeah, we should be coming up to that burn in about 16 minutes.
And when we get there, it's going to be a fairly long one. It'll be about a 10-minute firing of those thrusters. So once it starts, we'll just continue to hear. We should get some check-ins from the core to the crew as it's going to update them. And then, of course, at the very end, we're looking out for those words, good burn. That's what we want to hear. And they're continually adjusting the timings of these burns based off of just how much Dragon's velocity changes on the way uphill. We have some pretty specific times down to the second where they're initially planned, even days or even weeks out sometimes before they launch, but they're constantly readjusting in real time just how long these burns are going to occur and how long or when they're actually going to happen. And this is just part of the nature of orbital mechanics. We're trying to hit one speeding bullet with another one as Dragon continues to raise its orbit over the next several hours.
Dragon SpaceX for close burn.
Go ahead.
Yes, we are just about 15 minutes out from the close burn. You can expect a tank transition approximately 4 minutes into the burn from land tank to orbit tanks. Additionally, there will be a cabin fan swap during the burn or just after the burn, and SpaceX is go for the close burn.
Go for the close burn, and we copy the tank swap and cabin fan.
All right, that back and forth that we just heard there between Crew Dragon and Core here in Hawthorne was basically just saying that we are go to begin the closed co-elliptic burn, which, like we said, is going to be raising Dragon's orbit.
Yeah, coming up in just under 14 minutes. The crew, you'll hear them get a lot of details in these calls, and for this crew in particular, we know that they've asked for every little tidbit about Dragon to be on their displays or radioed up to them. And literally what they were being told is just some of the different tanks that are feeding these Draco thrusters they're going to be transitioning between, and they told them they're going to have a cabin fan changeover. That's something that would be pretty audible, as just like on board the space station inside Crew Dragon, there's a lot of kind of ambient noise for these crew members, so they're able to hear things like the cabin fan, which is constantly just moving the atmosphere inside because you don't have natural convection in microgravity, so hot air doesn't rise unless you're so you have to actively be moving that atmosphere the entire time. And so these crew members are trained to expect to hear different sounds, different sights when they're going through these different maneuvers, and so they like to get those kind of updates from the core and the teams down here on the ground, just so they're not caught off guard for anything.
Yeah, exactly. So like we said, this will be the third of 5 major burns that Dragon will be performing, and it is the last burn that will be occurring before Bob and Doug go to sleep. They've already had their meal. They will hopefully be giving us a little tour of Crew Dragon here in the next several minutes. And then they'll have a quick medical evaluation with their flight surgeons, and then they get the okay to take an 8-hour-long nap. And again, we want to make sure that we're allowing them to the best of their ability get those full 8 hours. So that is why, we have this close burn, and then we'll do the last couple.
SpaceX Dragon.
Go ahead.
Hey, Laura, would you mind taking the cameras down for a couple minutes if it's convenient?
Sure, we can disable the interior cameras for you. I did have one additional question on the breathing masks when you have a minute.
Go ahead.
Yes, we were wondering if you had pulled them out and stowed them yet.
Yes, we have. They're right next to each of our seats.
Okay, copy. Thank you very much. And Doug, just want to confirm we do have no interior cameras configured.
Thank you.
All right, we are just under 11 minutes now from that next burn. Haven't been tracking any issues with Dragon so far throughout today's flight. Hopefully we keep that up over the next couple of hours until they make their way all the way up to the International Space Station. This is going to be, as Kate was saying, the last burn for quite a while. We won't do the 4th of our 5 burns, that transfer burn, for almost another 11 hours from now. So Dragon's going to just kind of stay in this altitude below the International Space Station, about 10 kilometers or so, roughly co-elliptic with it for quite a while, pretty much throughout their entire sleep period. And then once we get to right after their wake-up time, we'll be looking to do these final burns, and then they'll be in much closer, just about 2.5 kilometers below the station's orbit, and that'll set them up perfectly for that final approach and docking.
Yeah, we're now at this point 2 hours and 50 minutes into the mission, and it's safe to say that everything has been going extremely well. And to this point, very nominal.
SpaceX Dragon, you're cleared back on board.
Copy all. Thanks a lot. And Dragon SpaceX, when you have a minute, I'd like to sync up with you on the media event.
We are available. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so if you have the PDF open, I've got a couple